silence, and I'm going to give a pledge of allegiance to the flag. If you care to join me, you certainly are welcome to do so. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we will go ahead and call to order the July 19th regular meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education. Mr. Johnson, do you have the roll call? We'll show for the record that all members are present. Next item on our agenda is adoption of consent agenda. Is there a motion? So moved. Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item on our agenda is adoption of the regular agenda. Can I get a motion? Motion by Mr. Duncan. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Wise. I believe we have a few items we need to add to this agenda. Mr. Johnson? Time out for technical difficulties for Mr. Johnson. We're all working fine. Board, if we will, we do need to add recommendation from our board attorney, Mr. Fuqua, regarding Section H of the board policy. So we will have discussion and/or action regarding Section H of the board policy. We will place that as the last item under new business. Come the new item H, Mr. Johnson. And then, if I'm not mistaken, we have two additional policies. Mr. Fuqua? Wait a minute. GB, what's policy number again? All right, but we do have two additional policies we need to add, which is policy JH and policy IDE. Johnson, you caught back up with me yet? Yes, item G, the new item H will be discussion and action on Section H. Item I will be discussion and action on policy JH. Item J will be discussion and/or action on policy IDE.
I'm caught up with you. Also, don't forget about our audit report as well. Do you just want to just recognize them, or you want to add them?
Tell you what, let's do that. Let's do that as an agenda item. We'll put that as item K. All right. Is that everything, Mr. Johnson?
Can we get the motion in the second as well?
We've already had a motion.
Can I get them again, please?
Who motioned approval of regular agenda? Mr. Duncan, and then Mr. Wise seconded.
Chairman,
Mr. Hale?
you may have already covered this, but I don't see the minutes on here. Is there a reason for that?
No, we held them off because we were working on a couple other things, and I also wanted the opportunity to try doing minutes through this system. So we'll just have them on next month.
All right. Any more discussion on the regular agenda? All right. Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll show that passes. Board, next item on our agenda is recognition hearing of delegation. Before we do that, we're going to recess for a few moments, and we're going to go into executive session. We'll stand in recess. All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Next item on our agenda is recognition and hearing of delegations. This is the opportunity for members of the public to speak. Each person is limited to 5 minutes. All comments will be addressed to the chair. First up, we have Mr. Eric Stamper. Mr. Stamper, if you would, please come to the podium. There's a silver button in the base of that microphone. If you would hit that so we could get you recorded, and give us your name and your address for the record, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Stamper of 1010 Strathmore Way, Hendersonville, Tennessee. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Tonight, you will probably be voting on 3 policy changes for our schools. These policies include system-wide limits on visitors, limits on information and event announcements, and prevents teachers from supporting student organizations. These policies have been proposed as a result of a lawsuit by the ACLU. I believe these policies are harmful and unnecessary, but even if I thought they were sound policies, I would urge you to oppose them because these are policies of appeasement. You may call them policy clarifications, but I assure you that everybody in the press, everybody in the community, and the attorneys over at the ACLU know exactly what this is. It is capitulation, and it will be a big victory for the ACLU. Channel 4 News is here tonight. I doubt they're here because you guys are going to make some policy clarifications. History is filled with moments where good people with good intentions gave just a little to a relentless attacking force. The result is always that the attackers see weakness and become emboldened. Maybe you hope the ACLU will leave us alone after we make these changes, but they won't. But even if they do, then they will just go on to attack the next community and the next and the next until they're back to us. Somebody somewhere has to stand up to the ACLU. I know there are many of you on this board who have the strength to fight back against the ACLU, but I believe you've received bad advice, losing advice from well-meaning attorneys. 2 weeks ago, each of you received a letter of support from 133 community leaders, including all of Sumner County's 7 mayors, all 24 county commissioners, both state senators, all 3 state representatives, the heads of both universities, more than a dozen presidents of civic groups, and dozens more business, government, and community leaders. The letter supported you in defending our county from the attacks by the ACLU, and the letter said we believe in the right to make our own policies in our own community, free from the coercion of the ACLU and the federal government. These people did not sign their name to a letter urging you to compromise with the ACLU. You have the support of Sumner County in fighting this lawsuit. This is not the time to surrender. Knowing that these proposed changes are a result of the lawsuit, and knowing the restrictions placed on our schools and teachers by these changes, it is impossible to interpret these policy changes as anything other than a victory for the ACLU. I urge you not to pass any policy changes until after this lawsuit is over and our community no longer has a financial gun pointed at its head. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Joanne Bobbitt. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could, there'll be no applauding. We don't need any disruption of the meeting. We do have a disruption to meeting policy, and so let's try and refrain so we can hear everyone. Ms. Bobbitt, if you would, please come to the podium. Give us your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Joanne Bobbitt. My address is 1019 Flint Drive, Hendersonville, Tennessee. And I'm here in support to ask you about allowing homeschooled students to play athletics with the school in which they're zoned. I'm a product of public education. I very much believe in education. I went to a public university. I have a master's degree from a private institution simply because that was what was available to me through my work. We have 3 children. I chose to homeschool them because I went back to work when they were all 5 weeks old, when it was an opportunity for me to come home and be with my children. It just so happened our oldest was ready to go to 1st grade. So someone introduced me to homeschooling, and I will be entering my 15th year of homeschooling and our last child. And he's really the reason I'm here. He is 16, at 6'9", still growing, and chooses to play basketball. We were excited that TSSAA changed the rule We went to the school for which he would be zoned. The coach was absolutely foaming at the mouth, eager to get him on that court. The other students who played on the team, they already know Joseph. They were really anxious to get him on their side. But when I contacted the board, I was told not such good news. I was belittled. I was told that people like us were not wanted in the school system. And I'm just asking for my child and many other homeschooled children. We like to say children who are schooled at home. There's a difference. They're socially capable to interact. We have very strong academics. We have testing. We have requirements. We have discipline. We just want them to have the opportunity to play sports in their community where we already pay taxes. We just want them to have the same opportunity. Let them try out for these academic, whatever it may be, basketball, football, lacrosse, whatever. Give them the opportunity for the school that they are zoned for to try out for these teams. If they make the cut, great. If they don't, we'll go right back. For Joseph at 6'9" in basketball, he needs some tough competition. That's why I came to our school board. That's why we went to the school for which he would be zoned. We need him to have competition so that colleges will look at him. I've already been told by college that he is college level material. He is going to play at the college level. We want to give him the next 2 years of high school play as much opportunity for competition so that he can excel in that next level. So I'm just asking, those of us who choose to school our children at home, we're not against public education. I am not against public education. I just feel like that educating academically my kids is my responsibility. But I just would like to have him have the opportunity to play for our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Frank Smith. Mr. Smith? Would, when you come to the podium, please give us your name and your address for the record.
My name is Frank Smith. My wife is Carolyn Smith, and I'm speaking for both of us tonight. We live at 153 Indian Lake Road, Hendersonville, and I want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity. And also, before I get carried away, I want you all to know that I enjoyed voting for my school board member. And I'm sure that other citizens here were proud and happy to be able to vote you guys into office. And I want to mention one thing. I like to think that I can rest at night and I don't have to come to these meetings because I've got you guys here to look after our interest and the interest of our kids. But sometimes maybe I might start feeling sometimes maybe I'd like to give you a reminder. The person, I'm sorry I didn't catch her name, but before me, I want to emphasize, because I wasn't going to speak on this one, but the main thing that I emphasize is freedom. And I think that freedom is our founding doctrine, founding principles of this country. And we want parents to take responsibility for their kids. Any educator worth his salt, I think, will say, the parents need to take responsibility for their kids. This woman's asking to do that. I hope that you guys will do that and recognize that and encourage it. The reason I came, though, is because I want to talk about these three policy changes that Dr. Stamper mentioned, talked about. And he did an excellent job. I don't need to reiterate everything he said, but I do want to ask you all to please take into consideration what he told you and realize that he's not alone. There's a lot of us that feel the same way. We want, as I say, we were proud to vote you guys in. We want you all making our decisions based on input from us, not from ACLU or any other organization. Please listen to us. We care about you. We know that you care about us. And we want you to, I want to be able to sleep at night and know I don't need to come to these meetings, that you all are taking care of our kids and looking after what's in their best interest and the best interest of the families and the citizens of Sumner County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Next up is Todd Brown. Mr. Brown, if you would, please come to the podium. Give us your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
Todd Brown, 1307 Newman's Trail. Thanks for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate you guys. As you know, we've been here for I think the past 4 meetings, and we're here about the homeschool policy, homeschool athletics policy. I wanted to address a couple of the issues that seem reoccurring. It's a couple of things that keep coming up. The first thing is displacing the full-time student. As you know, the TWSAA policy allows for a homeschool student to play in their zone school. So we're looking and would hope that you give our student a chance to try out in his zone school. We realize he's not given an automatic spot on the team. He's got to try out. He's got to make that team. He's got to be one of the guys that's better than the other 99 or the other 10, depending on what sport we're talking about. So we're asking that we give an opportunity to try out. Secondly, the number of homeschool athletes that try out within their zone school, we know that's going to be very small. I think the number we heard last week of independent homeschoolers here in Sumner County was 6. So if we spread that out across a number of schools, we're talking less than, one a school. So it's and these are homeschoolers. These are not necessarily student athletes. These are just homeschoolers that are independently registered. The second thing that I've heard mentioned a few times is the slippery slope. That sports will open the door to a lot of other things like a choir or dance or academic classes and that sort of thing. As Ms. Dunn shared with us last week after talking to Mr. Mosley of the TSBA, if the policy is written as a strict sports policy, to be a sports-only policy, that will not be an issue, should not be an issue, should not be a slippery slope, according to a counsel from the TSBA. So we don't look at that for that to be a big issue for us. And lastly, I'll just say that I'd like to see Sumner County lead the way, be an early adopter of the policy, lead our state with a new athletic policy that includes homeschooled students. Please use this opportunity to make a statement that says, whether you're educated in the classroom or at the kitchen table, we in Sumner County will treat you fairly. So what we're asking is that you take a look and include all students in Sumner counties. And guys, the way, as I look at this, a policy that includes is much better than a policy that excludes. So we're asking you to be inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next, Matt Moynihan. Matt, if you would, please come to the podium, give us your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
Name is Matt Moynihan, 103 Heron's Nest Lane, Hendersonville. I thank you for the opportunity to come speak today. This is an issue regarding the ACL lawsuit and the impending policy changes that you guys are going to vote on, and it sounds like you guys have already struck some kind of a deal, so this feels more of a formality, but I still feel that I need to speak my mind. What you're allowing the ACLU to do is come into our communities and dictate how we operate our community, our families, and how we express our faith. As a man of faith, Christian faith, I am not going to apologize or cower or hide or separate in any way who I am and my belief that I am saved by an almighty power. I believe that we have rights to free expression. I believe that teachers should not have to hide those rights. I believe that children have the opportunity to hear from groups of faith. They have an opportunity to carry out their faith, to believe proudly, and not to have to apologize for it. And it sounds like these policy changes that you guys are considering are going to bend over backwards to appease the ACLU because we're fearful of how much money it's going to cost us in a federal lawsuit, when these are disagreements that we should discuss at the community level. We've allowed a national organization to come in here and they will claim victory, no doubt about it. And Sumner County will be the laughing stock for the foreseeable future. And they're going to keep going to community to community. And where does it end? Like I said, I'm not, as a private citizen who works for a private employer, I can express my faith in any way I feel necessary. If I want to display a cross in my office, if I want to speak to somebody, that's my right. Everyone should have that right. And what I think you guys are about to do tonight is to completely stomp on that right. And I'm sorry to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moynihan. Next up is, I guess this is Nathaniel Brown. Mr. Brown, if you would.
I need to state my name and address.
If you would, please. Pull that microphone down a little bit.
Nathaniel
you're not
Brown.
the 6'9" basketball player, I can tell you.
Nathaniel Brown, 1307 Newman's Trail, Hendersonville, Tennessee. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. And I deeply appreciate you considering the issue of homeschool athletes competing in interscholastic public school sports. Our family has made many sacrifices to homeschool, and I'd like to continue that journey while playing competitive sports. And the 4 years I have in high school are 4 years I'm never going to get back. And I really hope to have as few regrets as possible while I continue my journey through high school. The activities we get to participate in high school lay the groundwork for the rest of our lives. Playing sports with my local high school and competing alongside those other guys will help build a solid base in many aspects of my life and help me become a better citizen, employee, and coworker in the future for this county and this state and this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next up is Sabrina Brown. Brown, we all have a pretty good idea. You live on Newman's Trail, but if you would, please state for the record your name and address.
I am Sabrina Brown, 1307 Newman's Trail, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Good evening. We do appreciate the consideration being given to this issue of homeschool athletes playing school sports. This does make our third or fourth time looking that you've looked at this, and obviously tonight we look forward to hearing that they can. We have likewise researched this issue quite a bit. We have talked to public school, private school, homeschool families, and we have spent a lot of time online looking at what's been printed. And interestingly enough, I ran across 3 statements at the Sumner Schools website that I thought you might like to think about for a moment. They kind of sum up why homeschool athletes should be allowed to play or to try out for high school sports. Your website reads, "We believe in a safe and supportive environment that holds high expectations for each student. We believe in parents, students, school employees, and community members working collaboratively and respectfully as partners in the education of all learners to develop prepared graduates. We believe in an inclusive culture that embraces diversity, gives equal access to each child, promotes responsibility, and supports self-esteem." I think Mr. Jeremy may have passed out something that I wanted just to briefly look at. Homeschool athletes playing school sports. Homeschool athletes playing school sports does a number of things. One of those is that it benefits more than just the homeschool student. Fielding the best team raises the competition level of the sports team, benefiting the players and the school. I'll ask you to consider the impact of Florida's Tim Tebow of the Denver Broncos or Pennsylvania's Jason Taylor of the Miami Dolphins on football, as well as on their respected hometowns and high schools. Both were homeschool athletes allowed to play sports for their public high school. The TSSSAA and the Tennessee School Board Association have come together to carefully construct a policy that they've determined would benefit those that they represent. Homeschool athletes playing school sports will be carefully controlled by the LEA, the principal and the coach. Academic eligibility and school jurisdiction are clearly addressed by the requirements of the new TSSAA bylaw. Quickly, I'll say the homeschool athlete must be registered with the LEA rather than an umbrella school. The athlete must meet the TSSAA academic requirements. He or she cannot be more than 3 months behind grade level, and he or she must take 4 to 5 academic subjects. These things will be proven by testing. The grades will be proven by testing. The athlete must be registered with the director of schools by August 1st and apply to participate in athletics by August 15th. This means he can't decide later in the school year that he would want to try out. It's a big decision that that student has to make up front to come under the control of the LEA, the principal and the coach. Any further jurisdiction concerns are met by the TSSAA's rules regarding transfer students. A student who engages in 3 or more days of practice, including spring practice with the high school in which he or she is enrolled, shall be ineligible for that sport for 12 months if the student enrolls in another school without a corresponding change in the residence of his or her parents. So that's going to eliminate cheating. Just like the other athletes are required, they can't transfer. A homeschool student wouldn't be either. And the coach would handle the discipline if there's any question about how a homeschool student might be disciplined. Well, how is any other football player disciplined or basketball player disciplined? They're going to have to run laps, or they're going to be benched for issues if that were to take place. The homeschool athletes playing school sports will have few takers, however. Only a handful of homeschool students will end up playing sports for a public school. The eligibility requirements, the athletic standards, and dominantly the homeschool population's favored use of the church-related school will prevent the majority of homeschool students from playing sports for their public high school.
I could have motion to extend time for Ms. Brown. Motion by Mr. Brewer, second by Ms. Cox. All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. I will rush. I just want you to understand that nationally, only 5% of the homeschool population would go the route of signing up at their local LEA with their public school system. So that limits tremendously the number of students we're talking about. And then if you look at a case like Florida, you would see where they've been doing this open access for 15 years, you would see that only 1% of the homeschool population would be playing athletics for the public school. So if we look here in our state at an estimated 5,000 independent homeschool students, 1% of that would look like 50 students spread across 95 counties. Again, few takers. Allowing homeschool athletes the chance to play school sports is the right thing to do. It's doing the right thing for the child to offer competitive high school sports to athletes who do not have true access to top-notch competition. Sumner County is already doing this. You already believe in doing this. You're offering to share sport programs and facilities with students who don't have access to them. One case that we've talked about before is the cooperative arrangement, where in Merrill Hyde Magnet School, athletes play football at Station Camp High School. Making sports accessible to the homeschool student is a growing trend. 24 other states already allow homeschool students some form of equal access to public school programs. After careful consideration and long-term study, the TSSAA passed this bylaw. They chose to pass this bylaw, feeling it the best for those they represent. The TSBA worked alongside the TSSAA to write this bylaw with hopes that you guys would adopt a similar policy and allow the homeschool athlete to try out for public school sports. You know, we know, we've been here, like I said, 3 or 4 meetings now. We know that you do believe in honorable ideas, like working collaboratively in the education of all learners, embracing diversity, creating an inclusive culture that gives equal access to each child. And we know that not because your website says so. We know that because we've seen it. We've seen you labor over the many decisions that you face. We've seen you grieve over the fees that families have to pay for their child to be educated in the public school. We've seen you debate over how to reward those teachers who regularly put in the longest hours after the school day ends. We know that you care. And we know that you truly seek to do what's right for the child. Please see our homeschool students as students within your sphere of influence and do what's right for them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next item on our agenda, unfinished business. Item A, discussion and/or action regarding policy IFCB, field trips and excursions.
Motion to
by
approve.
Ms. Cox, is there a second? Second by Mr. Brewer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that policy passes. Next, item B, discussion and/or action regarding policy GCE, support personnel compensation guide. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Hale. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Silkwood. Any discussion? Mr. Gregory?
Ms. Dursey, a question for her, please. Does this include bus duty pay?
I believe so. I believe this is just in regard to a change in the law and would not change anything else regarding our compensation.
This is GCE?
GCE, yes.
I don't have the policy in front of me, but I think it was prompted by a change in the state law and not anything with our compensation guide.
We just need to make sure that is included in our supplement pay.
Is that it, Mr. Gregory? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show that passes. Next, discussion and/or action regarding policy GCA, support personnel. Is there a motion, Mr. Gregory?
I spoke with Mr. Fuqua today for a few minutes concerning this, and I'm going to make a motion that we defer this. He is at the present time working on a policy that would connect with this, which would be dismissal procedures. So my motion would be to defer it and put the two policies together when he completes those two. And Mr. Fuqua, if you have any comments,
Mr. Fuqua?
or if do I need a second before he makes comment?
House Bill 335 required us to adopt a policy that we don't, I don't think yet have in our policy manual, and I am working on it. It just, when it eliminated some of the provisions concerning classified employees, it did require school boards to adopt, to some degree, replacement policies, just, due process essentially. And that one is not ready for tonight, but I will have it by the next meeting.
All right, I do have a motion to defer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Duncan. We typically do not discuss motions to defer. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll let the record show Ms. Silkwood votes no. Next, item D, discussion and/or action regarding policy BBDB, advertising and distribution of materials. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hale. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify, Mr. Wise? Sorry.
Would you mind individual vote, please?
Sure. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Gregory, would you turn off your light, please? All right, we've had a request of a roll call vote on this item. Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Brewer?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? It's messed up I'm gonna have to go down by the order because we've got an alphabetical order in the queue. We'll have to fix it.
We'll just jump around. That's fine.
Ms. Cox?
Yes.
Mr. Daniels? Mr. Duncan? Ms. Dunn? Mr. Gregory? Mr. Hale? Mr. Long? Or we'll skip you. Ms. Silkwood? Mr. Wise?
No.
Chairman Long?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-2.
All right, next item on our agenda, discussion and/or action regarding policy BBDA, visitors to school, to schools. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Gregory. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hale. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show opposed, Mr. Wise and Mr. Duncan. Next, discussion and/or action regarding policy JHC, student clubs. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Hale. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brewer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show Mr. Wise and Mr. Duncan voting no. That concludes old business. Moving on to new business. Item A, discussion and/or action regarding policy IKB, controversial issues. I'll need a motion to waive policy BD and approve policy IKB. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Cox. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Dunn. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show Mr. Duncan voting no. Next item on our agenda is discussion and/or action regarding policy IKBC, displays of controversial issues. I will need a motion to waive policy BD and approve IKBC. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Cox. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Dunn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show Mr. Wise and Mr. Duncan voting no. Next item on our agenda is discussion and/or action regarding policy IKBDA, selection of non-school facilities for school-sponsored events and activities. I'll need a motion to waive policy BD and approve policy IKBDA. Motion by Mr. Brewer, a second by Ms. Silkwood. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show Mr. Wise and Mr. Duncan voting no. Next item on our agenda is discussion and/or action regarding policy IDFAC. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Cox. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Brewer. Mr. Brewer, do you have something?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Chairman, if you'd allow me to have a couple of minutes here. This is our interscholastic athletics upon first reading. And this is not something that's new to me. I have been asking about this for 2 or 3 years now. We've had homeschool people that we've known in our time, and they wanted to play sports, and so I've kind of asked around about it. The overwhelming thing that I found from principals and teachers was it seemed like the same statement over and over again. And And I can understand that statement. A lot of times they'll say, well, our education system's not good enough for them, but the ball teams are. And I understand maybe that thinking, but I'd like to offer a different way of thinking on that, if I may. It's not necessarily why people homeschool. I've had some experience with homeschools. Number one, my daughter was homeschooled in the 4th and 5th grade. She was homeschooled because she had an immune deficiency and we didn't know what it was. And we had her back and forth from doctors and everything. And we were alerted by the public school system that, you know, she loves school, she's doing a great job, but she just can't keep up. She ran a low-grade fever. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of it, but we took her to doctors all over the country, but she was homeschooled for that reason. I had a niece in Alabama who sung in a gospel group and was told on the bus by 2 self-proclaimed Satan worshipers that they were going to kill her. And the school down there in Alabama didn't do anything about it, and so her mom took her out and homeschooled her. Finally, those people left. They moved out of state. They put her back in public school, and she graduated with her class. So there's a lot of different reasons. Entertainers, I'll bring up entertainers to you. I'm sure nobody here knows, maybe one on the board knows, but I started in professional entertainment when I was 13 years old as a professional musician, traveled all over the country singing in venues and playing in venues and doing TV shows and playing in Las Vegas and all this kind of stuff. I was not homeschooled. I took a different approach. I bribed my teachers. I just, I'd get them in backstage at the Opry or get them tickets or whatever, and I made it pretty good. But one of the guys that I worked with was homeschooled. Our school embraced it. At Greenbrier High School, or Greenbrier Middle School at the time, they embraced it. The times that I could not travel with him because of budgetary issues or whatever, I'd be in school, he would be out doing his thing on TV and everything. They'd wheel the TV in and show him on TV. You know, that's one of ours, although he was being homeschooled. They embraced it. I have to stop and think about what we may be missing if we do not allow homeschooled athletes on here. I'll give you 2, since I talked about entertainment a little bit, I'll talk about some entertainers that could have been missed. Elvis came and auditioned for the Grand Ole Opry, and Judge George D. Hayes said, son, you need to go back to Memphis and drive truck. So we could be missing something like that. Dolly Parton came and talked to Chet Atkins at RCA Records, and he said, honey, you need to go back to East Tennessee and have babies. So there's things that we may be able to miss. There's a lot of famous homeschoolers. As I did my research on this, one of the more famous ones was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln only spent 18 months in formal school. He taught himself under supervision of his stepmother, Sarah Bush Johnston, and a local librarian. President Woodrow Wilson was homeschooled, later became president of Princeton University. He was the governor of New Jersey. He formed the League of Nations. Of course, he's our 28th president. He didn't go to public school because he couldn't read until he was 10 years old. He was dyslexic. His father was a professor at Columbia Theological Seminary in South Carolina and took over his education. He was homeschooled. Turned out to be pretty good. Albert Einstein, when he was 10, the Einsteins fell on hard times and they had to pay a Jewish medical student named Talmud to tutor Albert in math, science, and philosophy. He was homeschooled. Famous athletes. Have you ever heard of Venus and Serena Williams? They've won about every tennis championship you can think of many times over in some cases. They are homeschooled. They were homeschooled. Jason Taylor, Ms. Brown brought up, the right end for the Miami Dolphins, homeschooled during high school. He played at Woodland Hills High School in Pittsburgh. He was homeschooled. This one really hurts me because I am an avid Roll Tide Alabama fan. But you can't beat Tim Tebow, folks. I'm going to tell you, Tim Tebow did a great job. In 1996, legislation was passed in Florida allowing homeschool students to compete in local high school sporting events. The law specified that homeschool students may participate in a team in the local school in the county and the school district in which they live. He played for Nice High School while being homeschooled by his mother. Now, if you pull up Tim Tebow's bio, you find out a whole lot about him being homeschooled and things like that. If you pull up his stats, it talks about Nice High School stats. Nice High School got that credit. I think if we let some of these people in, we may see that we get the credit too. I personally, having dealt with homeschoolers, I have 2 homeschoolers that work on my auction team now. And they're some of the greatest kids in the world. They're very well behaved. We have one other homeschooler and that we know that she's a junior. just took her ACT, and her score was 32. So they're very well taken care of. I've heard of homeschoolers for many reasons, and I'd say that the most prevalent reason, of course, is religious reasons, or that parents just want to have more hands-on. Imagine that, a parent that wants to have hands-on in their school, their kids' education. You know, how great would that be? Special kids, special needs kids have this available to them now. Some of them are homeschooled, and you know, if they're homeschooled and they need a speech class or something, they're allowed to come in and do that kind of thing. The negative way of thinking is that our education's not good enough for them, but the ball teams are. But I think the positive way of thinking is give them a shot. They may be the next Tim Tebow. They may be the next Jason Taylor. And the principal of that school will have the opportunity to show, and I want you to think about this, because the principal of that high school will have the opportunity to show them what public education does. They'll get a dose of that. They may come home and say, hey, Mom, Dad, I really like this. Maybe I want to enroll next year. We got the opportunity to show them from our side what can be done. And then the cutting edge. I have spoke on this board many times about being on the cutting edge. I sincerely believe that if you're the follower, the scenery never changes. If you're the leader, you got a whole lot of things to look forward to. So while looking at other districts, the way they do things and weighing it out, being the first to offer something can have its advantages too. I like being on the side that's willing to try new things, and if it don't work, that's why we have this board. You know, we can come back and readjust and improve. But if you don't try it, you'll never know if it would have been successful or not. We're an education entity. With this, we can educate by teaching leadership, teamwork, and if you want to be a significant member of the community, you'll soon learn that you can't do it by yourself. You got to do it with a team. You got to put a team together, and that's what athletics teaches. And we have an opportunity to invite all kids into this. Finally, in closing, I'll bring your attention to the statements made over and over in this boardroom. It's for the kids. So my question to you is it for all kids, or is it just for the ones in public education? My answer to that is very strong and very heartfelt, in that a kid's a kid. Doesn't matter. And we need to give them an opportunity. And with that, there's already been a motion made and seconded, and I might amend that motion if it would be okay with Ms. Cox. I'll present this and see. Why don't we try it for a year? Put it out here for a year, bring it back to the board again in May or June of next year, and see if these negative things that we've heard, see if any of them come about. If they do, we can readjust. If they don't, then we can vote at that time to continue on. But I think we need to give them a shot. And I would hope that you'd vote that way. So I would amend that motion if it's okay with Ms. Cox.
All right, look, Ms. Cox, are you agreeable to Mr. Brewer's amendment?
Absolutely. And I actually, whenever I wanted to make,
Before we move on, would you incorporate that just in the main motion?
so my main motion would be to try the homeschool policy for a year and reevaluate at the end of the year. Is that what Mr. Brewer's motion?
June of next year.
May or June of next year. And I actually I wanted to actually state that I wanted to see if we could bypass the policy and of the second reading, since we are looking at a time constraint due to this policy. So I wanted to see if we could pass this through on waive the policy BD and approve it on the first reading with the reiteration that we would revisit this next May, and that would be my motion.
All right, and so we have a revised motion now to waive policy BD, to approve this policy for the duration of this upcoming academic school year, and for the board to revisit it, this policy at the end of the school year, and take an assessment. And Mr. Brewer, is that agreeable to you as the second? All right, any further discussion? Ms. Dunn and then Mr. Hale.
Just a quick question. I know that looking through here, and I know we kind of talked about this, that we put a little bit, I don't want to say burden, but more work on director of schools, you know, to do this. I just want to make sure before we go on, can I get your opinion, your take on this, that, you know, make sure that this is something that you're in support of?
Well, and I appreciate that. I want to go on the record that I have plenty to do. But this is something, you know, I'm always open to doing anything that's going to help children. Obviously, any policy that you implement, I want it to be implementable so we can get it correct. from the administration standpoint. I've met with Ms. Brown. I have not met with Ms. Bobbitt, who was here earlier that spoke. And I've talked with many of you over the last, before I even arrived here in Sumner County about this issue. And I have stated many times, I'm okay either way. And I'm not trying to cop out and not say I'm okay, do it or not do it. I think it'll be fine if we choose to do that. If you are of the belief that you just don't believe that that's something that we should do, I'm okay with that too. I know that Ms. Cox has spent a lot of time, Mr. Gregory spent a lot of time, maybe others, Ms. Dunn, maybe you have. I know Mr. Brewer obviously has, looking at this issue. TSSAA passed a bylaw or policy. I know that it has been mentioned at the legislative level, which I think some of the states that were mentioned, 24, if I remember correctly, have taken it up at the state level. I don't know if that's something that will happen in Tennessee or not in future years. I mean, it might be answered for us, but I'm certainly okay either way. And the number of students that this might impact would maybe be a manageable number, to answer your question from our end. I did mention, I believe, to Ms. Cox when we talked about a month ago that in regard to the workload, if for some reason I have 200 show up that I have to figure out, that I will come back to the board and say this is not a manageable situation. Does that make sense? And I hope y'all allow me to reserve the right, if you pass the policy, to do that. Because at that point, it would be something that I couldn't manage, and it would be bigger than what we're anticipating if you choose to pass it. And that's something that I want to make sure to get on the record and reserve the right to do. I don't think that would be the case, but I want to be able to come back if that's an issue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hale.
Mr. Chairman, my question is more of a utilitarian nature. School starts in a couple of weeks. If we're to pass this and it's to be in effect for this school year, would we need to waive our policy and pass this on first and second reading tonight?
That's part of the motion.
Okay, it is. Okay. I apologize. I missed that.
Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've really spent a lot of time thinking, talking. There are other words that I'd like to use that I won't, but I've done a lot of research on this. This is a board of the Sumner County Public School System. I cannot, my obligation is to the students of the public school system. That's my obligation. I cannot support an action that may be fair to one, but has the potential to be unfair to 5. I really like the Browns. You, young man, you got a future, and I'm proud of you. I know the Bobbitts. I don't know if they're still here. We go way back. Might reconsider if they said that 6'9" student was going to be at White House, but no, I wouldn't. I'm obligated to the children in the public education system in Sumner County, Tennessee. And that's my stance. Thank you.
Well, he's gone. Well, I have a couple different thoughts on that. I truly believe that TSSAA represents and governs our athletics. And I have a hard time understanding why we would follow their regulations for things such as the heat index, which I believe we actually had a principal that actually commented on the fact that they utilized TSSAA's regulations on heat index this week and brought his players in based on that regulation. But we want to pick and choose and use a bias and not follow TSSAA's guidelines on what they say is fair and adequate in saying we can allow homeschool students to play in athletics, but we don't like that rule because we don't like that particular segment of population. I just don't understand that. TSSAA is there to make sure things are fair, make sure things are run according to certain rules and regulations. They give us guidelines. They make sure and exist for the sole purpose to make sure things are on even ground. And if that organization exists and gives us guidelines and says this is a fair playing ground, you know, I just don't understand why we would pick and choose what we feel, you know, is right and wrong. I mean, who are we to say that homeschoolers don't deserve that we're going to follow you all in heat index and how many games to play, and, you know, we're going to follow you here, but we just don't want to allow homeschoolers to play in our schools. And I'll be honest with you, the attitude that I'm getting from a lot is because they feel like homeschoolers for some reason don't deserve that. And I just don't feel like that's the right attitude to take. I mean, it seems like the homeschoolers are very positive about public education, and many times it's for the very reasons that Tim, my partner over here is talking about. He's talking about the fact that they are picking a particular instructional curriculum for their child for maybe a medical reason, dyslexia, maybe a particular instructional curriculum may better suit their child. They're not against public education, but we're saying, no, we want to exclude you from the very investment that you are actually already occurring through your property taxes. I mean, they're actually paying through their property taxes for the schools, for the teachers, for the ball equipment, but we don't want to allow you to take part in that. They're actually investing, all of these people out here who are homeschoolers are actually investing in public education. They're just choosing not to do it because they're picking a particular instructional curriculum that's better suited for their child. And I just feel like this is a great opportunity for us to allow them to get a return on that investment. Allow, you know, Nathaniel and Joseph and some of these students that are actually having their parents pay into the system, allow them to play on a team and allow them to be a part of the community. You're gaining in this, in my opinion, another family into the school system who will be another person who's going to be able to pay into the ball clubs, be able to pay into, be another person that's going to be able to come to a ball game and be another person that's going to be contributing to the booster club or whatever. It's a gain, in my opinion. I know that one principal actually said that knew Nathaniel, said he was bright, intelligent, respectful. Wow, that would be somebody I wouldn't want on my ball team. I didn't understand that. And so I think that we're really missing out on opportunities that we can actually have one of these, several of these athletes gain into our school system versus trying to be exclusive away from them. So again, this is something that, again, we're only asking for an opportunity to try it out. I think we could be innovative, be a leader in it. We can try it, evaluate it for a year. I don't think the numbers are such that it would be harboring on our new director. I've already looked at the statistics. We have about 10 to 15 registered independent homeschoolers right now. I don't think that's ill manageable in terms of our school system. If it does tend to be a burden, we can always allow our director of schools to come back and revisit this. So I implore you all to think and give these kids a chance and allow them this opportunity. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Anyone else? Ms. Dunn?
I will say this, I've been torn on this for a while now and studying it, and I'm very pleased with Mr. Brewer's suggestion of getting it like a one-year trial. At the same time, I would like to say, if we can, and I don't know if this is for a study session or just something that I just don't want us to forget, is that with this, we're still running the risk, and I say that, and I know I got to get a little bit of information from Mrs. Brown as well, but we still have the problem with scheduling, especially in our high school level. With our block schedules, the scheduling is going to be an issue because right now we have it set so that if you are in certain extracurricular activities, they are tied to a class that student is asked to take. And it's, you know, I understand what Ms. Cox is saying about, you know, that they've got their curriculum and that they're well educated. I don't disagree with any of that. I just want it to be fair to our kids that are already in our schools. And so, along with that, I would like to also see us maybe, at least over this trial period, if that's what we choose to do, to possibly look at the fact, do we need to relook at block scheduling? Do we need to look at extracurricular activities being completely separate from our school day so that our school day is academic based, not extracurricular tied to that? And I think that would eliminate some of our problems that we're having right now with kids that can't participate in a sport because it is interfering with an AP class or an honors class. And then I know we hear, oh, well, he's 6'9", so we can work it out or whatever. Well, my child's not 6'9". And so for my child that's not 6'9", they're probably not going to be so eager to work it out, because he's average. So I just think if we're going to do this, it needs to be fair. It needs to be fair across the board. And kind of like what Mr. Wise said, I don't see a problem with giving it a trial run. At the same time, I would like to say that I think we need to bear in mind that we do have some kids that right now, the way our classrooms are set up and our scheduling is set up, it's not fair to them. And it really won't be fair for kids that don't have to participate in those to be able to come in and play. So it may be something we need to look at.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Anyone else? Mr. Brown?
Sure. Thank you. I suppose I'll go along with this for a 1 year thing. I just have a feeling that after this person comes into Westmoreland High School and begins to play football and all, he's a good student and all, then his mother and daddy cannot instruct this child in chemistry or physics, or maybe he wants to take Spanish, and he wants to take those classes. We're going to have a stopping point somewhere. He can come in and do that. Then the strength coach, say he can't match out his schedule. He's a good football player, but we've got to take a strength coach and move him around to suit this special player we have. There's just some fine-tuning in this thing I think will have to be done, but I guess I'll go ahead and vote for that 1 year thing, give it a try, give it a run.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any other comments? Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will remind the board that we don't have to have a trial period. If we support this tonight and pass it, it can be brought back up in 3 months and changed. That's the freedom that we have. And I'm more concerned, quite frankly, with the end result of a 1 year trial basis, because if we decide that June of next year that it wasn't working as well as we had hoped, we're not going to do it. Then those students who participated that year, that seems to me, those homeschool students that participated this year, seems to me that it would be extremely unfair treatment for them. They get to play this year, but we decide next year that no, it didn't work well, so we're going to do away with it. That, to me, is kind of cruel. And I would rather see that we not pass it at all, or we pass it with no trial basis attached to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Any further comments? Mr. Daniels?
I've had an opportunity. I've talked to some teachers. I've talked to some administrators. I've talked to parents. I think the TSSAA policy addressed a lot of the issues. One of the big questions was, does this open up recruitment for schools, for homeschool students? For example, I had a parent ask me if I had a daughter that was great at softball and I live in Gallatin, could she go to Beach if that's not where she's owned? And I think the TSSAA policy addresses that. I think it addresses academic eligibility as well. The big issue that I kept hearing came more from students who expressed concern that when they go to cheer for a team, they're cheering for their school team. And reservations that if this policy were opened up to homeschool students, you could run into situations where you have 3 or 4 or 5 homeschool students that become that team, as opposed to students that are part of that school. So I've tried to think a lot about that. How do you allow homeschool students? Because I think they deserve the opportunity to at least try out and participate, but also protect the students that go to that school and cheer for that team. So I'm wondering if it might be possible to offer an amendment to this motion that is along these lines, that limits the number of homeschool students allowed to participate on one of these athletic teams to no more than 50% of the starting lineup for those athletic events as mandated by the TSSAA rules and regulations.
All right, is that a motion to amend?
That's a motion to amend.
All right, I have a motion. Is there a second? Daniels, I'm afraid that fails for lack of a second. Any further discussion on the main motion?
Well, I was just gonna,
Yes.
well, I think my only comment on that is that the roster is still the control of the coach. And I think that by and large gives opportunities like that, they wouldn't have to necessarily be concerned with that. I know what you're saying, but again, clearly, if there is only 15 independent homeschool students right now even registered in the Sumner County area, I don't see a situation like that happening. If you've got 15 students right now, they have to be an independent homeschool for the entire Sumner County area. I can't even foresee that situation happening. But even still, if for some reason a pocket of homeschoolers happens to try out for Portland or Westmoreland or wherever, the coach has control of the roster. So I just can't see, that would happen. So I do think, again, we still have TSSAA looked at that, and TSBA, I think that they put controls already in place with the policy to be able to control that already, with the coach still having control of their roster. So I would think that they would address issues like that. So that's the reason why I didn't support that particular motion. I just don't see the numbers control to being there to a situation like that happening.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Mr. Daniels?
Well, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, but if I'm a coach and I've got 369 homeschool students that are trying out for my team, I'm more than likely to allow them a roster spot.
Thank you for that observation, Mr. Daniels. All right, is there any further
like
discussion,
Coach that
Mr.
team.
Gregory?
Yes, I spent too much time on this issue, I believe. And I'm totally not against homeschool students participating in our athletic program. But I do, at this stage, feel, because when I've talked with other states who have started this, and most every time they'll say, what stage are you at this time? And when I tell them where we are, they say, you're not ready. And the reason for it is, a lot of it, the counties, and not only about 4, 6, I believe, in the state of Tennessee, who have gone to this homeschool. There are two types. One, they're very small. 2, they have full-time athletic directors. And with our assignment to school situation that we're dealing with, that is very big on my mind. And the next thing, I want to make sure that when we do start this, that the TSSAA is in total control, which I think they are at this time, but I still want to make sure that they are in total control of governing athletic programs in the state of Tennessee, because the next thing that has happened throughout our nation, when the state legislature's gotten involved, it really got messed up. No offense to anybody in the state legislature, but that's my thoughts. If it passes, I'm fine. But I'm wanting, I really do believe organization is real big in front rather than trying to catch up. And that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Any further discussion? I'll comment on this. I do like the amendment of trying this for a year, and let me tell you why. I think if we go through this and we go ahead and enact this and allow the 6 students, I believe, high school level students that we have in the county, those that choose to try out for a sport, obviously football or my powerhouse sport of cross country would be up in the fall. This would allow them to participate in basketball, baseball, tennis, golf, any of those types of things through the year. And I think we can then take a look at it and identify what concerns are issues. And I have all the confidence in the world that the staff would be able to keep up with that and say, you know, overall it's worked fairly well. Here's some suggested changes. They may come back to us in a year and say, this thing's worked great. We don't need to change anything. If we wind up with 200 students, I have all the confidence that Dr. Phillips will call me that night and say, my gosh, we have 200 that have shown up. You know, I'll tell you, I think overall we've talked about the team and you know, the roster and those sorts of things. And I've tried to look at this, and Ms. Brown, I do appreciate you acknowledging that this board has struggled with this particular decision, because I think we have. I think we struggle with a lot of the decisions that we have to make, because we do know the impact of what we do here impacts the lives of people like Nathaniel. And we have struggled. I personally have struggled with this. But, you know, I've tried to look at it from a little bit higher level, if I could, not perhaps the details. And one of the things that, for me, that, because those that know me know I'm a huge high school athletics fan. I'll be at a football game every Friday night. I go to as many basketball games as I can around our meeting schedule. I watch high school baseball. I've been to a tennis match or two. I walk the course for high school golf. And I'm just a huge high school athletics fan. And one of the things that I've noticed with my own children in sports is not so much their ability to score touchdowns or make tackles or hit a basket. Sure, that's the exciting part of it, and it makes you proud at the moment that that happens. But the real pride for me comes in what it does to them as a person. You know, I've got a picture that's blown up fairly large hanging in my bonus room of my stepson when he was playing football last year. And he started football in the 6th grade. And in the 6th grade, he was a little hesitant to take a hit. And he decided to go back in the 7th grade and play junior pro again. In his 7th grade year, he played junior pro football, and he started on that team, and they won 11 games. His 6th grade year, he didn't play every down. He did go out and play. They had lost 2, so he was, at that point, he was 20 wins and 2 losses. And he decided maybe he liked this stuff. And last year, he played middle school football, and he played for Station Camp, and they went undefeated. And so now I have a son that has only lost 2 games in the last 3 years. I wish he would lose, quite frankly, a little bit to help him learn to lose. But the best photograph that I have of him, he played offensive guard. And it's a picture of him in the down position, and he is pointing to his teammate of who he should be blocking. And when I took that picture, I knew that he had transformed from a young, hesitant player into a leader on his team to the point that he was comfortable giving direction to his teammates. And I've watched him mature watched his confidence go up. I'm going to support this. I think Mr. Brewer is probably right. I think we're going to show that we've got a pretty darn good school system. I think we've got good students in our school system. And I'm going to be excited to, if this passes, see some of these kids out there on the field. So, all right, no further discussion on that I see. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Brown?
One more word, I'll try to be brief. You know, I think we're about education, sure. I have a little granddaughter. I'm very proud of her. Carolina is an excellent basketball player. She does great. And she gets her picture in the paper 2 or 3 times. If they're playing every other week. But the most important thing, and she didn't take this from her grandfather. She must have got it from her grandmother. Carolina has never made anything other than an A in all of her subjects. And she's in the 6th grade now. And out of 130 6th grade students, she was number 1. Although this doesn't follow my history of my family much. But I'm very proud of her, but I can't get her picture in the paper for making straight A's. But I get Carolina's picture in the paper 7 or 8 times for going in to make a layup shot or making a basket out 12, 15 foot away. I'm just saying, folks, we need to be about education too now. Let's don't drift away and take football all the mind or basketball all the mind, because we are in the education business, and I want to keep,
Mr. Brown, I totally agree with you, and I apologize for getting choked up there a minute ago. I've heard our director of schools say several times that one of the things that makes a successful organization is pride, and it's not something you can buy. I'm awfully proud of my kids. So, Mr. Johnson, if we can, roll call, please.
Yes, sir. All right, it's been requested that we remain in district order, so everybody kind of hang with me because we're going to have to sort our way through this. Ms. Silkwood. Okay, Mr. Brewer. Ms. Cox. Ms. Dunn. Mr. Hale. You're on here. Mr. Daniels. Mr. Wise.
No.
Mr. Duncan. Mr. Gregory.
No.
Mr. Brown.
yes.
Chairman Long.
Yes.
Motion carries 8-3.
All right, motion passes. Next item on our agenda is discussion and/or action regarding Portland High School fee request. Is there a motion?
Comment, Mr. Long.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Dursky, this, I brought your attention some few weeks ago. And when we passed our fee waivers, it was brought to my attention, in fact, 2 or 3 times in one weekend by some staff at the school. And then I mentioned to you, and then the principal emailed you. And then I think I found out since then that what we approved was $25. Is that correct? And I was told by the staff members it was $7.
Okay.
Their school was up there, they were calling it 2 different things, and it was the same class.
Okay, it was the way it was presented, I think, when they requested their fees, but as it turns out, $25 was approved, and now that we know that's what they meant by whatever they named it, it's okay. So it's fixed.
So this does not have,
That's correct.
it does not need to be voted
We
on.
can eliminate this.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Mr. Gregory, I still need a motion from someone. Is there a motion to approve this fee request? Do we need to do that?
Apparently, it was already approved last time.
Okay, all right.
It was a naming.
All right. Next item then is item F, discussion and/or action regarding Westmoreland lease agreement. And I think this is something, Mr. Fuqua, you've been working on.
Right, it's gone through a number of versions, and it's just a lease, and it says what it says, so there's no legal
They typically do say what they say.
issues in
Thank
it.
you,
The
Mr.
question
Fuqua.
is, do you agree to it?
All right.
Mr. Chairman, one quick
Mr. Brown.
word. Let me bring you up to date on that. That is we've been scratching and begging and pleading about that sports building at Westmoreland. But we have approved with the city of Westmoreland to use one of their buildings across the way from the high school. And we'll go in there and mend up, patch up, fix up some lights for that batting and pitching range for the gender. We'll have girls and boys bathrooms and everything in there where they can all play baseball in the spring and all, and make it work till we can get a new facility built up there someday. That was promised to us, and you know, I'm tired of these promises that's being done, and half of them fulfilled, and the other half are not on account of politics. But that's another thing we'll have to live with.
Mr. Brown, is that a motion to approve? Thank you. I have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brewer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We'll show that passes. Next item is item G, discussion and/or action regarding policy GBRH, leaves of absence. And I believe this will also, Mr. Fuqua?
In the one that's on the screen, they flagged section 6. But I sent out an email on the 16th flagging paragraph 1E. It can just be removed. It's inconsistent with Public Chapter 335. It would require the staff to sort out some of those problems, but that particular section was essentially based on the rights that an at-will employee wouldn't have. So just, I think it can come out, and any problems that remain about that same subject matter, the staff can just sort it out. The paragraph 1N is a little ambiguous about whether it referred to the teacher contract that the personnel department had, or whether it referred to the former contract that involved teachers generally. And to just clarify it, it could be short. It could either be omitted, or, in other words, paragraph 1N could be omitted, or it could just be shortened to failure to comply with laws and policies may be grounds for dismissal. It's just a simplification. And then in my email, I went into some grammatical error issues. It would be a lot cleaner if some of the slashes were replaced. It was almost set a record for his/her, he/she, and/or, and this sort of thing. All that's not the best grammar in the world.
All right, Mr. Fuqua, is it your recommendation we include the language, your suggested language, into the revision of this policy?
Correct.
All right. I'm going to need a motion to waive policy BD, approve the revisions to policy GBRH as outlined in our packet here on the system, as well as include the additional revised language suggested by Mr. Fuqua. Is there a motion? Motion by Ms. Silkwood. Is there a second by Ms. Cox? Any discussion?
What are the major major changes? Just one or two. I didn't pick up any as I read this. Was there any major changes, leave of absence for?
Well, the major change was paragraph 6, and that was, I think, say again?
Oh, okay.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show that passes. Next item on our agenda is discussion and/or action regarding policy JHC, student clubs and organizations. I'll need a motion to waive policy BD and approve policy JHC, student clubs and organizations.
Mr.
Change
Chairman,
the
the next item actually should be discussion and action regarding section H of the policy manual.
Yeah, we'll come back to that if we can.
Okay, come back to it.
All right, jumped out there. I have a motion by Ms. Cox. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brewer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show Mr. Wise. Let's go back up to item H. I inadvertently skipped over that. Item H, discussion and/or action regarding section H of the policy manual. Is there a motion? Motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Silkwood. Mr. Fuqua, do you want to explain this, or would you like for me to explain?
That entire chapter involved union negotiations, and of course you all know that Public Chapter 378 of this current legislature's laws drastically altered that and made this whole chapter obsolete.
All right, so this is really a housekeeping measure to bring us in compliance with the new law. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Hale?
So that I'm perfectly clear and we record it in the minutes, the motion is to delete section H from
Yes.
our policy manual in its entirety to comply with state law.
That's right.
Yes, and just to clarify what we're deleting, it is policy HAA, board rights, duties, and legal status in negotiations, HAC, scope of professional negotiations, HAE, board negotiating agent, HAF, superintendent's role in negotiations, HAI, bargaining meeting procedures, and HAIH, bargaining progress reporting.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show that passes. Now I guess we're back down to item J, discussion and/or action regarding policy IDE. And I will need a motion to waive policy BD and approve changes in policy IDE. Is there a motion? A motion by Mr. Brewer. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Cox. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Show that passes. Ladies and gentlemen, the auditors, Parker and Parker, were called away to another meeting, and so we're going to remove item K, and that will be placed on our next regularly scheduled agenda. Before we move on to discussion of study sessions, I'd like to say that we have passed a number of policies tonight in preparation of the upcoming school year in order for staff to be trained on some of these changes and clarifications. And I'd like to say that in light of the approach of a new school year, we have taken into consideration certain board policies for purposes of clarification for our faculty and staff. It's the responsibility of this board to periodically review our written policies and ensure that they are consistent with the most recent statements of state and federal law. While we believe the policies recently revised have at all times complied with the law, it is the belief of the board that the amendments provide helpful clarification so that our schools can continue to function in a smooth and efficient manner. As always, the policies continue to preserve inviolate the rights of all students and teachers of Sumner County Schools. All right, next item on our agenda is item L, discussion of study session items. Mr. Johnson, do you have anything already?
Other than the ongoing budget discussion, and I don't really have anything off the top of my head.
Anyone else have any items for the study session? Cox?
I was just going to ask, are we going to have a budget workshop at any point? Have we thought about that? To just talk about the budget?
That is your prerogative, whatever you guys want to do.
We have certainly thought about it, we just haven't scheduled it. All right, any other items for the study session? This will be a very short study session. All right, next, Mr. Fuqua, any additional comments from you? None. Next item on our agenda is item 8, Facilities and Maintenance Committee. Mr. Hale, looks like we have 2 items.
I believe, trying this new system out, so give me just a second. First item up is request for modification for a freestanding loft in a classroom. Facilities and Maintenance recommends approval on this, and I'll make a motion that we allow Miss Amy Volts to, and her husband Bernie Volts, who's a licensed contractor, to construct this small wood structure inside their classroom.
I have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Brewer. Is there any discussion? Mr. Wise?
I don't know why, how much money is this?
It's no money to the board.
Sorry?
It's no money to the board.
Okay. I don't know, Mr. Director, Dr. Phillips, are you okay with building this classroom thing?
The short answer would be yes. I think after I've checked, we've done this in the past. We have them in other classrooms that have
Okay.
been approved, and so although I'm not certain what this one will look like, Mr. Wise, I'm assuming it'll follow some conformity to what we already have, and Mike Marshall will check, to make sure, just according to policy, that we do it that way.
Mr. Chairman.
I mean, it certainly seems like an item that could have been handled at staff level instead of going through committee, but whatever.
Mr. Wise, thank you for that observation. I couldn't agree more. Mr. Gregory?
I would guess this would be a kindergarten room, and I would guess about 2/3, 3/4 of the kindergarten rooms in Sumner County have these.
All right. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would add that, Mr. Wise, my understanding of state law is if it's a permanent attachment or alteration to any of our properties, it requires this board's approval. My understanding is this is not an actual permanent attachment, so it probably could have been staff approved, but they brought it to us, so we brought it on to the board.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll show that passes. Mr. Hale?
Second item is regarding some playground equipment, which does require board approvals. I think some of the playground equipment at Jack Anderson Elementary School was moved to another school. They've received a $10,000 grant from Memorial Foundation. Additional $5,000 is available to supplement the equipment, and all money would have to be turned into the board prior to starting the work. So this is a replacement for some, I think, equipment that's getting moved. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Next item on our agenda is communication from board members. Is there any communication? All right, let's start over here, Mr. Wise, and I'll come back to you. Mr. Brewer?
Just quickly, I want to thank the board for voting to approve the homeschool kids. That's kind of been close to my heart, and I think it's going to be really, really good. I really don't think I have to charge Mr. Phillips with anything, because I think he's a glass half full guy instead of a glass half empty. But I would ask publicly that when you sell this to the principals and everything, sell it with a positive. Because I know they're coming back and saying, well, education's not good enough for them, but and I think we can present it to them a little bit better. And I know you're just the man to do it, so just wanted to pass that on to you.
Yep, there we go. Mr. Wise?
Yeah, I want to thank the board and staff and employees of the school system for your expressions last week in the passing of my brother. Felt your prayers, phone calls, cards, and it's just wonderful. Visits. I've known Dr. Phillips 2 months, and he drags his little wife down to Brentwood to visit us at the funeral home, and I really appreciate that. Ms. Dursky, Ms. Wheeler came to the funeral home, and thank you. Those things, I tell you, it's people like that that is the reason we have such a good school system. And I want all of you to know I appreciate all of your words of encouragement, emails, cards. It touched me, and I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Anyone else? Daniels?
Yeah, I've had an opportunity over the last couple of weeks. I've driven by Venice Stewart and Guild, and Been over at Benny Bill's. Parking lots are pretty much full of cars with teachers working, even during the summer hours, getting ready for the school year. I think sometimes we don't always recognize their efforts when they're supposedly on break. But there's a lot of teachers out there that are working real hard to get their classrooms ready for the year. And I just want them to know that I appreciate everything they're doing for our students.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Any other board member? Mr. Brown, do you have something?
One thing, we had our most astute director of West Board, and he did pass, barely passed. At Chamber of Commerce, we had a nice outing that night, and he did well. We had a lot of fun. And then finally, the Friday of last week, Mr. Dwayne Oldham had become ill and has retired now. The best principal I believe I've ever met in my life. And they dedicated the street to him last Friday morning. So he was a little emotional about it too. But Dwayne's been a great guy, and thank goodness for fine people like him. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Anyone else? All right. Next item on our agenda is comments from the director. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to thank Jeremy and Bryce and Mike Marshall for some work in this room, and Linda Oliver was here earlier, and so it's taken just a ton of people to make this happen on kind of a short time frame. And even though I know I've struggled with it a little bit, it'll take some time for us to get used to it, but I do believe it's going to make us much more efficient, and it's going to be a much easier way to do business. And so I want to personally thank them for all their hard work that they've done to make this happen tonight. Just some things that are happening within the system. Obviously, July the 25th, we're getting geared up for our administrators to come back and have their initial day with us for administrative meetings, and our senior staff have been working extremely hard. Ms. Brown's been working kind of as the point person to make all of that come together and happen, and so she's done a tremendous job. All of our department heads have done a tremendous job getting ready for that. We're looking forward to it. And as Mr. Daniels mentioned, if you are out and about, we have dedicated staff that pretty much never stop. They always are working on behalf of our students. And when people talk about summer, you know, we don't have much summer anymore. We do things throughout the year. We try to keep our students involved, and so we have a lot of activities that happen even in the summer months that we stay busy. So we do have dedicated staff. Our principals are back getting ready for school. Students are enrolling. It's an exciting time of year, and this is the reason that we get up every morning, is to prepare and to be prepared and ready for almost 28,000 that'll be back in just a few weeks. And so we're excited about that and looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes everything on our agenda. So we stand adjourned.